I've seen a lot of people who have said things along the lines of like, I don't want to be in the military anymore, or like asking questions about like following lawful orders. Are they lawful orders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I completely understand that feeling of not wanting to serve the commander in chief that you're now serving under. Um, but also, and I really don't like saying this, but like tough shit.
Dive! Dive! Code red and 4 compartment middle level.
Torpedoes in the water!
No, I never have thought I was smart. I thought the people I dealt with were dumb, including you.
Okay, this is episode 30 of the Too Fast podcast. We are approaching 500 subscribers, which is really cool. And I just got an email from, I don't know, probably some Saudi prince or something, but we hit 45,000 views, so that's cool. Definitely growing. Our nuke school video is very popular. It gets every month, no matter how far we are from the release of that video. That is the most popular video. So I'm glad that one's there. This week, there's been, over the last 2 weeks, there's been obviously a whole lot happening in the news, with dozens and dozens of executive orders being signed, and the consequences of those. So we're going to get into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. The ones that we have a little bit of inside knowledge about or can shed some light on from people that were in position that would have been affected by some of these executive orders. And the one I want to start with is the one that is most interesting to me, from almost like a comic relief standpoint. And that is reinstating service members discharged under the military's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. So I'm probably going to read all of these verbatim because they're relatively short. And I think it's important that we at least speak about the right things. So they all start off by the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America. It is hereby ordered. Here we go. On August 24th, 2021, the SecDef mandated that all service members receive the COVID-19 vaccine. SecDef later rescinded the mandate on January 10th, 23. Vaccine mandate was an unfair, overbroad, and completely unnecessary burden on our service members. Further, the military unjustly discharged those who refused the vaccine, regardless of the years of service given to our nation. After failing to grant many of them an exemption that they should have received, federal government redress of any wrongful dismissals is overdue. Section 2 is redress, consistent with the policies announced in Section 1 of this order. The Secretary of Defense or the Secretary of Homeland Security, as appropriate, shall take all necessary action permitted by law to A, make reinstatement available to all members of the military, active and reserved, who are discharged solely for refusal to receive the COVID-19 vaccine and who request to be reinstated. B, enable those service members reinstated under this section to revert to their former rank and receive full back pay, benefits, bonus payments, or compensation. And C, allow any service members who provide a written and sworn attestament that they voluntarily left the service or allowed their service to lapse according to appropriate procedures, rather than be vaccinated under the vaccine mandate, to return to service with no impact on their service status, rank, or pay. And then the rest of it is kind of technical or like administrative, so I don't think we need to go over like who's going to carry it out, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the mandate, is those three things. I think it's really hilarious that people that were discharged from the military for failure to obey a direct order are now not only allowed back in, but get rewarded for having done no service over the past 3.5 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So I know that the percentage, so the last time that it was officially made that, hey, if you got kicked out because you didn't get a COVID vaccine, you can come back in, they had very few takers. I think it was 40-something people total out of thousands. That did not bring the caveat of $100,000 plus in back pay and benefits. So this one might be more successful, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, it's definitely going to lure in the crowd that want the cash.
Yeah.
None of those people got out. Most of those people that got out for those reasons, I feel like would have taken a slew of other reasons if they could.
I was going to say the same thing. I think
so.
It's definitely not across the board, but
Correct.
In the Navy, if you get shown the door and it's like, go ahead and pass go and collect your $200, like a lot of people are going to take that door.
Yes.
And this was just a very widespread door. Hey, here's your way out if you want it.
Yeah, a red carpeted door.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know that those people come back. Maybe a lot of them do.
The amount of time that's gone by is like the length of an entire contract for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so like I don't quite understand the back pay portion of it from that perspective, I guess. Would it just be to the end of the contract they would have had?
Well, that's a good question. I think that it will require new contracts, of course.
Yeah.
Because like your contract dates matter. It's not just like any amount of time between now and the end of humankind, you have to fulfill your service. No, it's like this time block is when you're in.
This is the exact day that it begins.
Yeah.
This is the exact day that it ends. Here's when you go into IRR.
And something must happen to your contract if you're discharged from the military. I mean, it's not like
they would have had to have all been closed out.
Right.
They would have all been administratively dismissed, right? So I'm curious exactly, I guess, some of those weird technical details on the offer. I think that the reason we saw such an incredibly small, number of people return is because, like you guys said, a lot of people probably took that as the easiest path, not necessarily the principled path to get out.
Right.
So you probably did have 40 people who came back because they were like, cool, sweet,
And I think there were some of
my
both,
principle, right?
There were probably some people who were like, hey, in principle, I'm not going to get this vaccine, but also I want to get out of the military. So I'm not going to, jeopardize that.
I think it's wild if they're going to offer like full back pay for the entire interim.
That's what it says.
From when you were left to now.
That's what it
says.
That's nuts. Yeah,
what did you do to earn that, dude?
You did
Article
exactly
92,
what you are allowed to do. Yes, you broke the rules.
Like you should have gone to NJP at a minimum, and instead you got ADCEPT.
Well, there were some NJPs. There were NJPs for it. Yeah.
Oh no, I mean universally, if you got ADCEPT for this, I think you would have had to have, because it is literally it was a direct violation of a lawful order at the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
The one question that will have the potential to completely blow my balls off is, does the time over the last 3 years count towards retirement? Ooh. And if the answer is yes, what a perk.
Yeah. That was one of the things that came to the forefront of my mind. Two thoughts I've had about this. The first one is I served with a guy on the Bunker Hill. I'm not going to say his name, but he was refusing to take the vaccine, and he did get punitively whatever consequences for it. And I kind of fell out of touch with him, and I assume he got out of the service. But at the time, he was an LDO. He was an 03. But the fact that he basically would have been, somebody was explaining to me that he would have had to go back to, like he would have lost his commission.
Oh my God.
Which was when he was an E6.
What do you mean if he would? If what? You saying that could have happened?
That could have happened. I don't know if it did happen to him, but that was one of the things that they were threatening him with.
Jeez.
Oh, wow.
I just can't imagine going to, let's say, the Hampton tomorrow, and Joe Schmo, who has not been in the Navy for 3 years, rolls in and is rolling in cash and is just like, sup, I'm back, or I'm here now. Like, what the fuck, man?
And guess what? I don't have to follow any of the rules because Trump's got me.
Yeah, apparently.
I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
I'm a nub. That would be so frustrating for everyone else. Dude.
I was texting Lucas, and I don't want to unfairly divulge Lucas's like stance on any of this stuff, but Lucas did get out of the Navy and did not get vaccinated. He didn't like get NJP'd. He didn't get kicked out of the Navy, but he got out of the Navy and was refusing the vaccine. It just so happened that those two things lined up time-wise. And it kind of made a stink for him on the way out.
So, I mean, wouldn't that sort of also make him fall under this order? Because now he's eligible to come back without it?
If he writes a statement that would say, I only got out of the Navy because I didn't want to get the vaccine, yes, he's covered under this. It doesn't make it clear if those people get back pay, but that they are covered in this executive order. But the thing that I posed to him was, imagine if you go back right now as a nuke and they send you back through the pipeline. So you get 3 years credited for having done fuck all in the last 3 years. And then you get to go back through nuke school for 2 years, which would be the cakest thing ever.
And then you just retire.
And then you're done.
And then you're at
20.
16, 17 years already.
Yeah, do one more sea tour and you're done.
Yeah. Wild.
One more sea tour as a newly qualified.
But if you followed the rules and got a vaccine, you've been in the shit for the last 3 years, and you might be grinding to retirement.
So because
you lost a lot of people.
Pipeline is an E6.
Yeah, I mean, you keep your rank. Apparently, that's the one thing that they did talk about with the statement people is if you chose to get out and you weren't separated because of the vaccine, no impact to service status, rank, or pay.
Hey, Chief Select, can you do this checkout with
him? Right? It's wild.
Yeah, you gotta submit for Chiefs board, but you're in A school.
Yeah. Can you tell us about the last command you were at? Yeah, I worked for my fucking local tech company.
34.
My last command was my
coming in.
Oh man.
So the other thing that I immediately thought of was when I commissioned, they had just closed down, or were in the process of closing down the PSD in Groton, which is Personnel Support Detachment.
Yeah,
They handle all of the paperwork, all of the pay, all of the like behind the scenes stuff, and it took months and months for my pay to get corrected.
Yeah, they shut it down for COVID.
They were like eliminating that.
So it was when they were cutting all those PSDs.
They were consolidating all the PSDs, so it was moving to only, I think, Norfolk and San Diego. So my thing is, like, for something like this, it's so out of the ordinary. It's never been done before. You're reinstating people and you're giving them back pay. And you're encouraging people. We haven't got to this part yet, but you're encouraging people to quit their jobs.
Yeah, the people that will be processing them back in.
Who's going to process all this shit? You're not getting paid for like 6 years, probably.
It would take a long time for sure.
So I just think it's crazy that.
But I think one thing, so I will read this one note in here because it's important. Is it not actually? There it is. So under general provisions, nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect. And then point 2, the functions of the director of the Office of Management and Budget relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals. So this money to back pay these, who knows how many people are going to come back in, is not in the budget. And this order shall not impact the budget whatsoever. So where the fuck is the money coming from? You may have no one to process you back in and no money to pay you with.
That's wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think for the people out there who were like, look, I really, truly feel like very strongly about my own physical health and that it would jeopardize it. And because of that, I don't want to take it. I think it's cool that, they're not going to have what could have been a great career ruined by a moment in time like that. But there's just so many questions. There's just so much up in the air about this.
And like this conversation is not the vaccine mandate question. Like that is a whole different thing.
Yeah, that's different.
There's already vaccine mandates that everybody follows.
Right,
no
exactly.
questions asked.
I mean, you didn't get through boot camp without it, but yeah.
Yeah, flu vaccine. Are you getting? Everyone's line up on cruise mess. Everybody's getting a flu shot. Yeah. And if you would have fucking made a stink about, hey, I'm not getting my vaccines. I'm not getting my medical said I need to go back for vaccines. I'm not gonna. Yeah, that would have been a problem.
Yeah. And
a lot of people don't do that, like they did with the COVID vaccine. Your run-of-the-mill vaccines are not politicized. But yeah, it's just crazy that you can have been kicked out of the Navy for failure to follow direct order under the same president, by the way.
Yeah.
That's
then
reinstated.
reinstated by that president later.
That's what's so crazy.
Yeah.
This is an executive order that's like, they did this to you. I'm sorry, my sweet little darlings. And then like you actually look and it's like, wait, it was me.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what the fuck, bro?
It's like when dad tells you to get in
What are you
timeout, but then
doing?
actually, no, you're fine.
Yeah, it's not that mom comes in and
actually,
saves
I'm
you.
sorry. Here's an ice cream.
Dad stormed out and then comes back in and saves you from timeout.
What? Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty wild.
And then I think another thing that is going to happen, or at least I foresee happening, is let's say there's hundreds of people that take this way back in. Well, those people still have to immediately meet standards. At least you would assume so. So you rejoin the Navy. Let's say you get 3 years credited towards your retirement, or maybe you get 3 years and you reach retirement. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? You get this lump of cash, and then you go fail a bunch of PRTs, and you can't do your job anymore. And what is going to happen?
I was going to say a lot of these standards to begin with. So.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. It's the same type of thing that when Trump was in office the first time, that was when he was calling for TikTok bans.
True.
And now that he's back, he's like,
open that shit up.
TikTok's the best.
He's trying to be like, oh, I saved it. You know,
Yeah.
I saved it for you. And it's like, do you remember who first tried to get it banned?
Yeah, it was happening all around the same time because that's when TikTok took off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild though. It's wild though to have the same dude 4 years apart be like, you know, on the one hand, here, Iran, here are some citizens that you can hold on to, and then come back 4 years later and be like, I'm going to rescue them because I'm Reagan part 2. Like, it doesn't make any sense, you know?
Reagan
it's
part
very
2.
weird, dude.
It's super strange.
Reagan
I
part
remember
6.
being told, obviously this is a tangent, I remember being told by my leadership that I was not allowed to have TikTok installed on my devices.
Oh, same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's legitimate. I think if you actually have any kind of communication with within the government or within the military,
Yeah, of course. And I was like, okay, I don't have it anyway. But that was this president, is what I'm saying.
Same guy. Yeah.
Same guy. All right, let's move to the next one so we can cover them all. The next one is prioritizing military excellence and readiness. This one is a little bit longer. I probably won't read the whole thing. Same opening. It ends with, and to ensure the readiness and effectiveness of our armed forces, it is hereby ordered. Section 1 purpose. The U.S. military has a clear mission to protect the American people and our homeland as the world's most lethal and effective fighting force. Success in this existential mission requires a singular focus on developing the requisite warrior ethos, and the pursuit of military excellence cannot be diluted to accommodate political agendas or other ideologies harmful to unit cohesion. Recently, however, the armed forces have been afflicted with radical gender ideology to appease activists unconcerned with the requirements of military service like physical and mental health, selflessness, and unit cohesion. Long-standing DoD policy 6130.03 provides that it is the policy of the DoD to ensure that service members are, quote, free of medical conditions or physical defects that may reasonably be expected to require excessive time lost from duty for necessary treatment or hospitalization. As a result, many mental and physical health conditions are incompatible with active duty, from conditions that require substantial medication or medical treatment to bipolar and related disorders, eating disorders, suicidality, and prior psychiatric hospitalization. Consistent with the military mission and longstanding DoD policy, expressing a false, quote, gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with the soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required for a service member. For the sake of our nation and the patriotic Americans who volunteer to serve it, military service must be reserved for those mentally and physically fit for duty. The armed forces must adhere to high mental and physical health standards to ensure our military can deploy, fight, and win, including in austere conditions and without the benefit of routine medical treatment or special provisions. I think we should probably break down that first before we kind of get to the policy. Obviously, this is just pointing out transgender people and making the claim that they should not and will not, furthermore, have a role in the armed forces because they medically can't, is basically what he's saying.
They're medically unfit.
Medically unfit. And because they're transgender, they automatically don't have a personal life consistent with the type of life required to be in the military. So humdy-dumdy, it makes sense, is what this is saying. It's obviously a crock of shit. I mean,
I won't on their behalf, but I can name multiple names of people who I served with who have come out as trans post-service.
Right.
Like, this makes no sense from that perspective alone. I've already kind of given my rants here before, but we're already so hard pressed for people.
Exactly.
It seems odd to me to come up with new criteria without having really good reasoning.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is bias-based reasoning, but the assertion that they're physically unfit to do the job, I would say, is untrue, given that I know people who served their entire contracts.
But it's not only that; it's that these people are also screened just like everybody else, and they are medically fit. That's the whole that's the whole point of doing medical screenings all the time.
Well, but I think the assertion here, the claim, is that their mental and physical health would be too taxing on the military over the long term. For the duration of the time that they are in, they would not be able to fulfill their service requirements, is what they're saying.
He's not talking about like first ascension transgender people. He's talking about all of them.
What I'm saying is it's bonkers to me because I know people who not only went through all the same criteria to get in, met all the standards, but then also maintained all the standards throughout, served alongside me. And then afterwards, by the way, we're like, hey, by the way, these are my preferred pronouns now. It's like, oh, sick. Cool.
Yeah. Doesn't change anything about the way that they worked, of course.
Still the same badass human beings they were then.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
I think it's one thing to say like accommodating this shift and your health status would be a distraction from the main focus of the military, which is to be warfighters. But then the other part of the letter, which basically says you are a piece of shit who can't live your life according to these virtues, basically.
Yeah.
I think is
which
like
is, by the way, not a fucking requirement.
Actually, can you recap that last bit there?
That's
the part where it talks about
too
that?
far to say that. Like that part was completely unnecessary to get the point.
That's just personal attack. I would be interested in hearing it again.
Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adoption of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life.
Fuck that.
Yes.
Hard disagree on that one, though. Yeah. I mean, I can literally see the argument that, like, look, the medical care is going to be very costly. And so if you're going to be transitioning, we don't actually want you to be in active duty service during your transition. That's a stance. There's some valid claim to that. The same way that, like, when someone becomes pregnant, they become very limited in their duties, and for months on end, they are completely set aside from the regular job.
Yeah, and you know what they don't say? They don't say your fucking whoopsie to get pregnant shows that you don't have a commitment. Yeah, exactly.
Even though I will say, like, in the surface fleet, that is kind of typically the mentality people take towards it. If you got pregnant, it's because you're
executive order.
Yeah, but it's not an executive order, and it's not saying that every single person that has ever gotten pregnant is a piece of shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, like, I don't understand how you can just point blank, just carpet make that statement when we know better.
Exactly. Like, we
know there are people that contradict this.
The whole thing is that transgenderism, like the fact that transgenders exist, is a falsehood in the eyes of these people.
Yeah.
Like, it's not real. And so what they're saying is, if you are a man and you say I'm a woman, you're lying. That's what this is saying. And if you're a liar like that, you can't serve in the military because you're.
If you would lie about something so fundamental, then clearly you're too fucked in the head, right?
Right. That's what this actually is that's not a real thing. And because you are perpetuating that it is a real thing in your life, you are such a piece of shit that you don't have a place. I mean, it's hate speech.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I mean, frankly, though, like, although I personally do not agree with the contents of this order in any way, I am curious how many people are actually affected by this versus how much of it is just, I want to drum up votes.
Well,
sure.
Aren't there people?
The number of people that would vote for this versus the number of people that will be withheld from the military because of it is a massive difference. And so to me, it's just like, it's such bullshit, dude.
Amber asked if there's people being kicked out right now. I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm going to read a little bit more. So the policy, it says, it is the policy of the U.S. government to establish high standards for troop readiness, lethality, cohesion, honesty, humility, uniformity, and integrity. This policy is inconsistent with the medical, surgical, and mental health constraints on individuals with gender dysphoria. This policy is also inconsistent with shifting pronoun usage or use of pronouns that inaccurately reflect an individual's sex. Definitions. The definitions in the executive order defending women from gender ideology. So the executive order where he said that there's only two sexes and everybody's female, basically by accident. He's saying that applies to this also. And then implementation within 60 days of the date of this order, SecDef shall update DOD I 6130.03 medical standards for military service. Secretary shall promptly issue directives for DOD to end invented and identification-based pronoun usage to best achieve the policy outlined in Section 2.
Invented pronouns, yeah.
Within 30 days of the date of this order, the Secretary shall identify all additional steps and issue guidance necessary to implement this order and submit to the President through the Assistant of the President for National Security Affairs a report that summarizes these steps. Absent extraordinary operational necessity, the armed forces shall neither allow males to use or share sleeping, changing, or bathing facilities designed for females, or the reverse. Within 30 days of the issuance of the respective updates, directives, and guidance under subsections A, B, and C, Homeland Security shall, with respect to the Coast Guard, issue updates, directives, and guidance. So same thing for the Coast Guard. Implementing the revocation of Executive Order 14004 pursuant to the Executive Order of January 2025. That executive order from January 25th, 2021, called Enabling All Qualified Americans to Serve Their Country in Uniform, has been revoked. Accordingly, all policies, directives, and guidance issued pursuant to Executive Order 1404 or 14,004 shall be rescinded to the extent inconsistent with the provisions of this order. It doesn't say specifically. I'm sure it's covered in that executive order, the one that he's canceling, whether or not, like, that's probably where the protections for trans people are laid out. And this essentially overrules that and revokes it. But I don't know. I don't know if people are currently being kicked out for being trans or not. Someone will probably tell us. But
yeah, if you or someone you know has been affected by this,
yeah, of course. Comment. Amber and I did see a transgender pilot being interviewed on, I think, CBS News. And their fear, and she also had I don't know exactly the role, but she
was legal.
Legal. She was like the head of some legal coalition to protect trans people in the military. But anyway, this transgender pilot was coming up on retirement, and her fear was that she would not be allowed to continue her career. Not necessarily that she was going to be kicked out, but like, oh, the time is now to re-enlist, or she was an officer, obviously, whatever, to re-up. She was worried that was not going to be permitted. They probably know more than I do about the actual language that's in all these connected documents. But it doesn't mean that people aren't getting kicked out. I don't know.
It's just very sad this is where it's headed.
What I think is really funny is that despite all you hear from certain people about how none of this makes any sense, it's all invented, the language that they use in the executive order is actually pretty spot on of describing gender politics. Right. They're describing the difference between your gender identity and your given sex. Like, if they can talk about it and get all of that right, then
because they're obsessed with it.
But for the majority of the people I talk to have so much hate when it comes to this topic.
Yeah,
they couldn't tell you
it's unfounded.
How to they couldn't have an actual discussion.
True.
With any of these terms. They just don't know what it means, and they don't care.
I mean, someone that knows obviously helped write this.
Yeah.
But I think so. Having done more than one deep dive into integrating submarines for the purpose of this podcast and the hopes of still putting out that episode, this kind of reads like those did. So when the idea of integrating submarines was first floated around, there was so much pushback that read very similar to this about like it's impossible to deal with all the medical situation, all the additional medical situations that women will need. You haven't thought about pregnancy and OBGYN care and on and on and on and on. It was this litany of things this is why women on submarines is a horrible idea and will never work. And it sort of reads like this, where it's like, okay, maybe I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm obviously not a transgender person. I don't know the details of the mental and physical care, et cetera, that's involved. But also, it sounds a lot like you just don't want this change. And you're coming up with whatever excuse you think will resonate to make it happen.
Not even that you don't want the change, but you're working actively to make sure it doesn't. Like, it's already happened and you're trying to revoke it.
Yeah, true.
That is, to me, another part that stands out as extremely bizarre, I guess, is under this exact same president in the past, the total opposite order was put through. The DoD came up with a full plan, how you integrate, at what point they change your gender identity in DEERS, how do sleeping arrangements work. Like, they had already laid it all out, and we went through multiple trainings on how it was going to work, and that, like, there would be no pushback. And then it's full reverse, and then same president.
The call's coming from inside the house.
Yeah.
Here's your pushback from the same fucking.
Yeah, it's weird.
Commander in Chief.
I have the book that says Project 2025, but I don't have the one that says Project 2019 because it didn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't exist back then. But if it had,
this was. I mean, this was less of an issue then. Or not, it was less of a politicized every night on the news issue then. But it's just like, I have read the mindset before. So there's people who join the Navy specifically. I'll talk to the Navy. And then for issues outside of their control, they don't get to serve a full contract, or they never make it to the fleet or whatever. And I really appreciate the people who tell those individuals, like, you still volunteered to serve. You still did everything that you could do. You still were willing to make the sacrifice. It wasn't your fault that you couldn't make it. And these people are in that same boat. All these people have volunteered to make the ultimate sacrifice in the name of their country. And their country is saying, go fuck yourself. We're not interested in your fucking sacrifice. Dude,
I think what they're really saying is, we don't need you.
We don't
want you. Are inconsistent with our values.
Right, exactly.
Like, your being is inconsistent.
Yes, your existence.
That's something that I think is nuts. Is like, we've seen before how policies can sometimes flip-flop depending on who's president in any given term.
Of course.
If it goes red to blue, it's flip-flop, back and forth. But something we've never seen, something I've never seen, is those decisions coming into, like, the way the military mans itself.
Yeah.
Equips itself. Like, what happens in 4 years? Hypothetically, we have a Democratic president.
Sure.
And they're like,
I mean, it will be a different Republican if it's not, at least.
They'll be like, and then they say, actually, all of that, we're flipping it back. So if you
here's what they do.
They
say,
for COVID, then you're back out. And if you're trans, then you're back in.
They say if you're trans, you get back in. You come on back in. Yeah.
And that's just crazy. It's I don't think that's sustainable. You can't.
Of course not.
Okay.
Have that.
If it does flip again in the next 4 years, and it goes blue on the next time around, then we'll be tied with the longest streak of continuous flip-flops since right before the Civil War.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's the only other time that's happened.
Holy shit.
Michael,
and that was like people in the Senate fighting each other and shooting each other and shit. So
dude,
we're not too far off.
That's a crazy fact.
That actually is nuts.
Yeah. But I also think it is kind of nuts. Like, for a administration that is depoliticizing a lot of things according to their own vernacular, it is interesting that they seem to be politicizing a lot of things that weren't, to me.
And it's like, again, we're back on the 325 ship Navy. The constant rhetoric about we need to have a bigger military and project our force. Like, who the fuck is going to man it, dude?
Right.
Where, like, all you're doing is marginalizing the people that already volunteered for this dog shit fucking military you guys have spun up.
If you remove DEI and you actively target non-DEI people, you don't have a military anymore. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah.
That's everybody.
Looked at your military?
For those of you who don't know,
fuck, man.
The military is very much manned by racial minorities.
Yeah.
And
racial minorities are the majority.
Yes.
In a lot of
two
different
categories.
places.
I'm going to be really, really broad and may have to cut this. There are two categories of people in the military. There's the really privileged people who went through college the first time around and ended up as officers. There's people from the bottom economic third of America. That's
everybody. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And who do you think from the second category? It's not just people that look like me.
Right.
The Vincent was like a majority minority ship when I was on there, dude.
I am just waiting. And I almost know this is going to happen for an active duty service member to get deported.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's coming.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about that. We had a whole bunch of people who weren't even nationalized.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they were going to military service to become nationalized.
To become nationalized, yeah. People on my ship were doing that too. They were in the process of becoming citizens, but they were in the military.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that towards the beginning of what you were reading, he said basically something along the lines of like, we're not going to follow the political agenda. We're like, this isn't a political agenda or something like that, but it really is.
Everything is. It's just wording.
That's what I think. I think it's kind of crazy. They're like, we're depoliticizing stuff. And like, are you?
If it wasn't
this is so political.
If it wasn't a political agenda, it wouldn't have to come as an executive order. It would come through the normal means of fucking government by elected officials.
Yeah, I mean, your SecDef policy would change, and then each year 4 stars, 5 stars would change their policies, and it would just trickle down.
Yeah,
the way that it did the first time when it was the opposite order.
True.
That I was talking about before, where like I had to go through those trainings and everything.
Right.
That's just how it happened. Like it just kind of went through the normal channels, and eventually my division master chief was like, "This is what we're doing."
Yeah, probably to their credit, because they were like, "Holy shit, we don't have enough people. Is there a demographic of people we're not considering?" Yes, there is. Let's consider them.
I think a lot at that time, what had happened is like certain people had first brought up needing specialty healthcare.
Right.
And so then the DoD had to figure out like, well, what are we going to do about this?
That's how the training was presented to us at the time. It was all from the lens of healthcare, like new healthcare benefits, new healthcare rights. And it was like, of course, they had to tell us also like what it means and that they didn't know what it meant for the submarine force, etc. But yeah, that's how the change came about is the healthcare side of it.
Normal channels.
Well, yeah, normal channels, but the healthcare side.
Like literally like a thing came up within the DoD. The DoD created a policy to address it and it went back down.
Yep.
Very normal.
All right. The next one is obviously very related. It is restoring America's fighting force.
Ending America's fighting force.
By the authority vested in me, same opening. Purpose: as Chief Executive Officer and Commander-in-Chief, I'm committed to meritocracy and to the elimination of race-based and sex-based discrimination within armed forces of the United States. No individual or group within our armed forces should be preferred or disadvantaged on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, color, or creed. Immediately after we've disadvantaged. Unfortunately, in recent years, civilian and uniformed leadership alike have implemented diversity, equity, and inclusion (DEI) programs and their attendant race and sex preferences within the armed forces. These actions undermine leadership merit and unit cohesion, thereby eroding lethality and force readiness. They also violate Americans' consciences by engaging in invidious race and sex discrimination. All those Americans' consciences who are just filled with thinking about what DEI is happening in the military. Policy. It is the policy of the administration that the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, with regard to the United States Coast Guard, and every element of the armed forces should operate free from any preference based on race or sex. Definitions: a DEI office means an office, division, job, or other unit of an institution established for the purpose of influencing, hiring, or employment practices at the institution with respect to race, sex, color, or ethnicity other than through the use of colorblind and sex-neutral hiring processes, or promoting differential treatment of or providing special benefits to individuals on the basis of race, sex, color, or ethnicity. The term gender ideology has the meaning given to that term in his other executive order. The term divisive concepts has the meaning given in his other executive order. Oh, actually a 2020 executive order, combating race and sex stereotyping. And then section 4, abolishing the DEI bureaucracy. The Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security shall abolish every DEI office within the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security with regard to the U.S. Coast Guard, respectively. including any vestiges of DEI offices, such as sub-offices, programs, elements, or initiatives established to promote a race-based preferences system that subverts meritocracy, perpetuates unconstitutional discrimination, and promotes divisive concepts of gender ideology. That's the meat of it.
So is it just the DOD and DHS?
Well, that's this one.
Okay.
That's Restoring America's Fighting Force. The next one we're going to talk about is Ending Radical and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing.
So there's separate ones. There's an order for DEI in the DOD and DEI in not the rest of the government.
Yeah, and we talked about DEI within DOD when we covered Pete Hegseth when he was first suggested as SecDef. And like, I think I have two separate kind of like approaches to this one, which is number one, I didn't and don't think that DEI programs like are a thing. And I know that they may honestly know more than I do in that world, but I was certainly never impacted by it, never saw it, never heard anyone impacted by it. I did not know or think that there were such a thing as a DEI office that was like filling race-based roles. I am not in favor of that happening. Like, I don't at face value have a problem with this executive order. I just think that they are using DEI in a way that isn't truthful. Like, I don't think what they're saying is happening. I think it's not. And this is at best a waste of time.
Well, that's the thing. I had this conversation at work, and DEI is essentially a very adult corporate approach to eliminating the good old boys clubs where people get in to roles where they're not qualified, not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to call it diversity, equity, and inclusion,
right,
to sound less racist, or sexist. Whenever someone that is non-white, non-upper middle class gets the job,
more qualified, right?
So I'll leave it at that. That's where I'm at on it.
Yeah, I mean that is what it is. That's what DEI is. It's not. It's not being racist against white people. It's about equity, and inclusion, making sure it's equal.
For anybody
out there,
getting rid
of the equity inclusion.
So that's what I mean. We're getting rid of that. Yeah.
For anybody out there that thinks that racial minorities or gender minority women in the workforce are the only people who could potentially be hired that are unqualified for the job, that's utterly and completely false.
Yeah.
Because like, as Mikey said, everywhere you look, there are boys clubs. You hire the guy that you used to work with who got out and is now looking for a job.
Of course.
And you're a part of the same social class. You might be the same race. And those kind of things just perpetuate themselves year after year after year after year after generation of sailor.
Right.
And so people are so up in arms because they're like, oh, they're hiring unqualified people. Yeah, they've been doing that for fucking ever, man. Like, wake up, dude.
As it turns out, they're trying to stop that.
Yeah.
I think if you read this with a good foundation of understanding of what DEI is in real life, this reads like we're going to stop doing DEI and we're only going to do DEI. Okay, cool. Yeah, do it merit-based and colorblind. Like, yeah,
they won't. Like,
exactly.
The whole reason the DEI exists is because they didn't.
Right. Exactly.
The DEI is they're just like hiring people off the street.
Exactly.
Who are not qualified for the role. They're not even telling people you should apply for this role or anything of that nature. It's just an office that does bookkeeping to make sure that we're not just hiring white dude good old boys. Like, that's what it is.
Also,
right? It's an accountability check.
Right.
Yeah. Plot twist. Protected veterans are DEI hires.
True.
We are. We absolutely are.
Yeah, I got preference.
Disabled vets are a massive DEI hire.
Yeah.
Like, you report that to the government, and then anyway, it's so dumb.
You should have seen the look on someone's face at work when I mentioned that little tidbit to a veteran.
Yeah. But I think the problem is that the message that they're sending to certain people in this country, because they know that they don't actually know what this means, is that they know that certain people are going to see that and think, oh, thank God they're going to hire less brown people.
Yeah, probably.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
Or
some people
women.
are going to think when they see, oh, they're getting rid of DEI. Good, because that. Now that's horrible, obviously, but I think that's that's the intent of like
I would
turning
agree.
this into an executive order.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, a 65-year-old woman whose husband passed away, that was retired, that goes back to work because she doesn't have anything else to do, is voting for this to happen, and she's the fucking DEI hire in the office.
Surviving spouse.
So,
yep.
If you go to USA Jobs, they will list out for you all the things that you could be that would give you preferential hiring over somebody who applied for the same job with the same qualifications that didn't have those things. And there's like 10 of them.
Yeah.
And that's on USA Jobs, which is every government, not every government job that's available right now, but most of them that are like open to the public or open to certain individuals to apply for.
Yeah. So you're saying like all things else being equal, if you are one of these things, you get preferentially hired.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not in favor of that, but that is it's a thing.
I think it's one thing for the government to do it, because all of those classes are, like, for example, being a disabled veteran.
Right. I know.
I think it's one thing for the government to do it. It's another thing to be like private, non-public office.
But that they're not even using DEI to mean that. They're using DEI to mean affirmative action, and it's not.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. The next one is ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and referencing. It's very similar, but it's more broad. It's not about DOD. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll probably put it up on the screen so that it can be read. It's a little bit more focused on like, oh, Biden did these horrible things, and even says his name.
Did they just copy paste it straight out of Project 2025? Like, does it say the next conservative president like 25 times
within the first 100 days? I mean, it might as well be. It might as well be. We talked about all this when we did that video, also Project 2025. Yeah.
It's all the same topics, it turns out.
And again, when we covered that, it's like none of this is a surprise, right? And the country voted for this, and it's happening. But it's like we told you this is going to happen. And you have to understand what that actually means, which I think people will start to understand what it actually means when the consequences are actually happening. But I think Dakota's right. In the meantime, it's like, nice, get all the people I don't like, people that don't look like me, out of the roles that I don't think that they should be in.
I think it's interesting that it's split into two executive orders like that. And I think if I had to guess, it's so that they can be legally challenged separately.
Oh, good point.
Probably because it's easier to uphold the DOD since the president is the top Commander of the DOD.
Part of it,
right.
Yeah.
That's
my guess is the second EO is probably going to go into like a legal battle. They're probably going to take it in a circuit court that's very red, so that way as it goes up, it'll stay in effect. It won't get held off, and then they'll try and shove everyone out as fast as they can while it's in legal battle. And then whether or not the Supreme Court eventually upholds it, they've already done what they wanted to do with it. That's my thought on why they split it.
Yeah, part of the directive of the broader No More DEI executive order says to assess the operational impact, which is the number of new DEI hires that were made under the prior administration. I'm actually pretty fascinated to learn if that ever actually comes, what the operational impact was for the previous administration.
That would be kind of interesting. Like how many people do they determine are a DEI hire, and according to what?
Right.
White no, white yes.
I mean, it's
male.
I think that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Have to assume that's what it's going to be.
That's kind of fucked. Because what if that's just literally the only applicant, literally like the best qualified applicant? Like,
right.
They would say like, oh, clearly a DEI hire.
Whether it's officially, I mean, when I was going through boot camp, I'll just tell this little anecdote. When I was going through boot camp and the RDCs were looking for the first RPOC, so the first recruit like division commander. Literally, this is going to sound like I'm kidding. I'm not. Literally, the first thing that they did was say, are there any female enlisted or any female Asian nukes in here? And there weren't. And so they moved down the next demographic that they preferred to be the leader of the division. This is just a chief in the Navy, and I don't remember. It was a female. I don't remember anything about her. But like, yeah, it's people are shitty. That's just what happens.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are a bunch of female Asian nuke RPOCs running around, at least at the time, running around RTC.
I think
DEI hires, you know?
Going back to something you said a couple minutes ago, Kenny, part of the thing that has been upsetting me is that I don't think that people will understand that the consequences as they come out.
They already don't. It's already obvious.
Because you said, I mean, this is what's happening. This is what the country voted for, and maybe they'll start to see the consequences. But I don't have a lot of faith in that.
That's fair. But I mean, people are realizing, oh shit, eggs are still really fucking expensive. Are they gonna realize, oh shit, the military is even more undermanned than it was when he took over?
No, I think it's gonna be like, oh well, he tried.
Along the lines of, I mean, I guess the podcast topic is, you know, so far, and just the DEI stuff for DoD. I don't think to the notion that people will see how it changes stuff. I don't think they will. I don't think people see in general the current state of the military. So they don't see how it changes.
Mikey and you have a good point, which is that people that don't realize that they are DEI hires are really going to fucking realize that this is what they voted for and it was a whoopsie.
I hope, but like, as far as how is this going to impact the Navy, how is this going to impact DoD, no one will see it. No one will know.
Yes,
they're going to continue to listen to whatever they hear on the news and agree with it.
Yeah. Hopefully the people within the military can find a voice in some way. It's
I think anybody that has a voice is being removed.
I know. Yeah, you're right.
Wasn't that just the two EOs that we read? One, DEI, we're done with it. Before that, you know, if you're trans, get out. Like,
yeah. But it's not like they had a voice. I mean, they didn't really have a voice. I just mean the only way that we're even going to find out about it is if people within the military start saying stuff about what's happening. Because we're not going to hear it from the White House.
Once again, how massive of a percentage of people in the military would count as a DEI hire in the expanded sense of it, right? Like all protected categories, and then also the special government categories for hiring and stuff.
It's got to be at least, I would guess, around 50%.
Massive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it is just disingenuous to say that like that is problematic to the culture of the military.
Yeah, but I think,
like you said, did it impact you? Were you ever told, I'm sorry, we're not going to promote you because, well, you know how it is.
Because you have the wrong color skin. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's not a thing, man.
It's not.
So they're taking a non-problem and applying a solution that they favor to a non-problem, so that without calling it that, they can remove the people they don't want.
But I also think that if it backfires and manning drops further and competent manning drops further,
I don't know how it wouldn't.
But like, I don't think they can actually go implement it 100% because I think it's going to be catastrophic, and they'll know that.
Yeah, but how many dominoes are going to fall before they figure it out?
That's the question.
That's what they want to have happen. They want to break things so bad, because then the solution is, well, why does this need to be a government thing? Why can't we privatize this?
True.
Yeah.
Why can't
Elon more things Musk they break, the more they can
start
fix
a company? Why can't Mark Zuckerberg come in? Why can't Jeff Bezos come in?
Dude, do you guys want to be the first people to enlist in Navy X?
Navy X.
Elon's Navy?
Space Force X.
Fuck no. My auto self-driving ship's gonna auto self-drive itself right into a fucking cliff.
Yeah.
Hey, fun fact: our ships do have autopilot, and we don't use it ever.
Yes, they do, and there are companies that could easily hack it, and I still think a lot about that when I look back at those two events. They were both in the exact same geographical area.
Holy shit. Okay, so we covered the two DEI executive orders. So in the wake of that, an email went out from OPM, Office of Personnel Management. That's what it is, right? Office of Personnel Management.
That's correct.
To federal employees, and here's what it says. During the first week of his administration, President Trump issued a number of directives concerning the federal workforce. Among those directives, the president required that employees return to in-person work. restored accountability for employees who have policymaking authority, restored accountability for senior career executives, and reform the federal hiring process to focus on merit. As a result of the above orders, the reform of the federal workforce will be significant. The reformed federal workforce will be built around 4 pillars. 1, return to office. The substantial majority of federal employees who have been working remotely since COVID will be required to return to their physical offices 5 days a week. Going forward, we also expect our physical offices to undergo meaningful consolidation and, oh my God, what is that word? Divestitures, potentially resulting in physical office relocations for a number of federal workers. Is it odd, by the way, that a guy who made his money with commercial real estate has a vested interest in RTO?
Don't say that he got his money out of commercial real estate when he got his
I mean,
dad.
He
got his money out of
bankruptcied a
commercial real
lot
estate.
of different real estate investments.
Yeah.
Upwards.
Anyway, performance culture. The federal workforce should be comprised of the best America has to offer. We will insist on excellence at every level. By the way, if anyone thinks that the federal workforce is comprised of the best America has to offer, take a deep, hard look at yourself, because it has never been that.
Wow, thanks, Kenny.
Look at these schmoes.
Anecdotes notwithstanding, okay?
Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Kenny, can you read that line one more time?
Yeah, the federal workforce should be comprised of the best America has to offer. We will insist on excellence at every level. Our performance standards will be updated to reward and promote those that exceed expectations and address in a fair and open way those who do not meet the high standards which the taxpayers of this country have a right to demand.
Yeah, so following that, they sent out a frequently asked questions, which basically, I can't find it now. It says something along the lines of, we encourage people to leave their lower productivity public sector jobs to join a higher productivity private sector job. And I just don't know if they know that they're saying
nonsense.
They're saying one thing out of one side of their mouth.
Well, they're trying to privatize a lot of things.
We got to be the public works has to be the best, the best. But
yeah.
Ultimately, we expect you to move on to the private sector because...
Oh, you mean they want people to leave their...
public sector job
and go private?
To go private.
Because the federal government should be the best of the best.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
It doesn't make sense. Doesn't make any sense.
Of course it
doesn't.
Anyways, sorry to interrupt that, but
doesn't have to make sense. It's
so in that there's a soft promise of a more to come, that they're going to update standards.
Yep.
That's going to come in the wake of removing all DEI and a lot of these other personnel changes, the soft offer to people to quit.
Yeah.
So I would anticipate that none of those changes, and this is obviously just guesswork, but I would anticipate none of those changes are positive for the individual.
Agreed. I mean, they can't
universally, they're going to do the same thing that they've kind of been doing in the DoD for a long time. They're just going to slash benefits right and left and wait until people leave.
Right.
And they're going to say, "Oh, well, we're reforming our standards."
Yeah,
and you didn't meet the new standards.
The next blue government will see it as their responsibility to fix that, and will have accomplished nothing over their term. And the cycle
they overspend. They always overspend.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Pillar 3, more streamlined and flexible workforce. Flexible meaning in the fucking office. While a few agencies and even branches of the military are likely to see increases in their size and their workforce, the majority of federal agencies are likely to be downsized through restructurings, realignments, and reductions in force. These actions are likely to include the use of furloughs and the reclassification to at-will status for a substantial number of federal employees. What the fuck is at-will status?
So at-will basically means that you are employed at will of the government, and it basically means that they can fire you without cause.
Yeah. No union, no contract, no government contract for work. Just you're not typical. Contracted. Yeah.
So you're like a regular hourly employee.
Yeah, and you can just
Many states are at will employment states, and it literally just means you don't have a union contract or anything of that nature.
Yeah. Because it's at will both ways.
There are some government employees who are part of collective bargaining units,
right,
and various other things that blah 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 blah.
Yeah, imagine if the shipyards went at will.
Imagine if we had more than 2 shipyards.
Well, yeah.
Imagine if we had more than 2 shipyards that weren't in cahoots to equally be monopolies.
True.
Imagine if the government contracts hadn't intentionally been written to overrun. Fucking hate it here.
Start talking again, and then
I'm gonna wait. Hold on.
Keep going.
Pillar 4. Enhanced standards of conduct. The federal workforce should be comprised of employees who are reliable, loyal, trustworthy. Man, that sounds like Germany. And who strive for excellence in their daily work. Employees will be subject to enhanced standards of suitability and conduct as we move forward. Employees who engage in unlawful behavior or other misconduct will be prioritized for appropriate investigation and discipline, including termination. Yeah,
that is subjective. The president says that what you've done is illegal. So
yeah, true.
You're being prioritized
because he didn't like it.
Unlawful behavior would have been fine, but throwing in or other misconduct is scarily vague.
It's interesting.
Each of the pillars outlined above will be pursued in accordance with applicable law, consistent with your agency's policies, and to the extent permitted under relevant collective bargaining agreements. If you choose to remain in your current position, we thank you for your renewed focus on serving the American people to the best of your abilities and look forward to working together as part of an improved federal workforce. At this time, we cannot give you full assurance regarding the certainty of your position or agency, but should your position be eliminated, you will be treated with dignity and will be afforded the protections in place for such positions. If you choose not to continue in your current role in the federal workforce, we thank you for your service to your country, and you will be provided with a dignified, fair departure from the federal government utilizing a deferred resignation program. This program begins effective January 28th and is available to all federal employees until February 6th. If you resign under this program, you will retain all pay and benefits regardless of your daily workload and will be exempted from all applicable in-person work requirements until September 30th, 2025, or earlier if you choose. The details of this separation plan can be found below. Whichever path you choose, we thank you for your service to the United States of America.
So when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he told all the Twitter employees, basically, you're fired, but we'll still pay you through such and such time, but just go ahead and quit or you're fired. And then he didn't pay them.
Yeah. I mean, that is almost definitely what's going to happen.
The email had the same title and there were no legal ramifications holding back payment.
Yeehaw, hell yeah.
Because just because you take this early resignation doesn't mean that they still can't downsize your position or consolidate with another office and be like, oh, conveniently, you already don't work here, really, and now you definitely aren't getting paid. So
yeah, spoiler alert, the federal government is not in the business of paying people to not work for them. They just aren't. They never have been. They never will be. They're going to get theirs.
There's laws that say how many days you can have of leave off. Like there are already structured, written in law, ways of preventing people from having too much time off paid.
Right.
That are in direct conflict with this executive order.
Side note, sometimes they can't even pay the people they're supposed to pay.
Yeah, exactly. And if they pay you,
if
they pay you too much, you better keep that money aside because they are gonna come for it.
Every September, we go into this cool little thing where we pretend we're gonna pay people. Maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Right.
We're in perpetual continuing resolutions currently.
Yep.
We just keep kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, I don't know. I think this whole thing is literally like Elon was just like, so I did this cool thing at Twitter and look how well it worked, right? It's his exact same play, 1-to-1. There's no difference in it. They just like went in and changed the wording, so it was like, oh, twitter.com, shit. I meant federal government. Like that's it. Yeah. So I don't know. I think this is going to work out just as well as it did there.
It's Elon's Twitter takeover, sprinkle in Project 2025, and not a bunch of fraud. Not as much fraud.
Slightly less, maybe fraud.
Yeah. I think the Iron Dome maybe should be a different episode.
I'm actually kind of excited about that concept, but I also, if I look at the total picture, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It would take an enormous amount of money and effort and engineering time.
Maybe we just cliffhang Iron Dome. See you next week.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that one. I think that one's really cool. I just think it needs its own.
Is there anything else that needs to be said in the wake of the 4 that we did cover?
I do not plan on resigning my position.
Are you sure?
Or going back to in person.
I need to just have that on the record, so if any mysterious circumstances were to befall me, I do not plan on resigning. I'm happy with my job for as long as it may last, but I am also starting to believe that I might have to look towards other paths eventually.
Yeah.
Because who knows, I am a remote worker, and if they try to tell me to come back to the office, I'm going to resign.
Yeah.
So
I think the one thing I want to talk about, like in closing, is I've seen a lot of people who have said things along the lines of like, I don't want to be in the military anymore, or like asking questions about like following lawful orders, are they lawful orders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, I completely understand that feeling of not wanting to serve the commander-in-chief that you're now serving under. But also, and I really don't like saying this, but like tough shit. Like when you enlist, especially when you enlist in the military, it's not something that you can control. You don't get to say, I would like to serve under this commander-in-chief. That's not part of it. It's the country that you live in. It's the country that you swore to protect. And I would discourage anyone strongly from trying to like lawyer their way out of doing their jobs still. It won't end well, almost certainly. And you're also on the wrong side of that argument, in my opinion. And I know that it sucks, and I'm not without empathy in that situation. I also served under this commander-in-chief. Obviously, times were different. But like, I get that feeling. And yeah, welcome to it. It sucks ass. Hopefully you don't have to go blow up some people that you don't want to blow up, but that is part of this whole fucking game.
Just put your head down, work hard, get out as soon as you have the option to, but prioritize your own health and freedom and the health of your family, because it's not going to help anybody if you're in the brig.
Yeah, that's true. And I would say that if you have that mentality, I would probably try to depoliticize your life and your mindset. It's not going to be conducive to, what do they say? Good order and discipline, good conduct and discipline. It's not going to do any favors while you're in, especially if you disagree with the side that's currently holding pretty much all the power. I would turn off the news. I would depoliticize your life as much as you can. It's not going to help.
Good
That's
advice.
it for me. Mikey, anything?
I'm hoping the fire will start to put out.
It's been raging this whole episode.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
I remember serving under this commander-in-chief previously, and it was the only time, I think, in U.S. history that the commander-in-chief got into a Twitter war and redirected an entire care strike group and extended a deployment with no plan. So
yeah,
I get it. Like it's a challenge to disagree greatly with what things may be, but you just do your job. You signed up for it.
Yep, it is the nature of the beast. All right. On those fun words, see you guys next week. 2 weeks. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Like and subscribe.